Hi there, it's me, Brianna, and you are listening to Are We Caught Up Yet? Marvel Edition. You can find us on youtube.com/SafeTheGameMedia and podcast services. If you do want to show Save the Game Media some extra love and get early access to all of our content, you can find us on patreon.com/SafeTheGameMedia. Today, I am joined by my co-host and friend, Sam. Before we get started with our review today, how are you and what have you been watching?
I'm fine. I was trying to think of what I've been watching. Not much. I
watched that too, actually. Just kidding.
Severance. I think that's it.
I'm behind on Severance. My dad is going to kill me.
I think that's... Yeah, there's nothing else. No, just Severance.
It's a good one, though.
Indeed. Here's all the spoilers.
We'll catch up tonight.
So the spoilers are that the ship sinks at the end.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, that's Titanic. Sorry.
Oh.
There's a really big gorilla.
I would not even be surprised.
That's a fair point, actually.
My family and I have all been quoting Severance, but it's probably not like any kind of quote that you'd think that we were quoting. But I just couldn't get over it. Like there's a part where somebody, I'm not going to spoil it for peeps, but somebody answers the phone and says, "Read the room." And he says it so violently and so aggressively that what I thought was happening was, when you're like really angry at somebody and you like yell at your phone and then you pick up the phone?
Yes.
Or you're like, "Hey, screw you." And then you like pick up the phone or whatever. I thought that's what he was doing, but he wasn't. He just like answered the phone and was like, "Read the room." And so I lost it when I saw that, like, that's actually how he answered the phone. And so my family and I have been yelling at each other all the time now and saying that. But anyways, that's from a week or two ago. It was a funny one. What have I been watching? Not that you asked, but
I didn't.
I'm gonna say anyways because you did say you were done. So
I am, yeah.
I finally watched Wicked. It was really good. I did hold space for the lyrics of Defying Gravity, in case anybody was wondering. My dad's girlfriend and I held hands like this during the song. It was funny. It was silly. It was a good movie. I did enjoy it. And then what else have I watched? Oh, I watched Before Sunset, the second one in the trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
Can't believe the movie ended like that. I'm very upset. We haven't watched the third one yet, so I'm really mad right now. Because it ends in such a crazy spot and it doesn't really end. Like, it's not actually like an ending. I mean, it is an ending technically because they ended it that way, but it's not like actually like an ending.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, a little upsetty spaghetti with that. Other than that, I've been watching off and on. I've been watching Evil. It's interesting show, but definitely more something I just like kind of throw on in the background that I'm not too stressed about paying attention to. I started watching The Office, but just a little. Just a little. That's about it.
Fair enough.
Read the room. I can't get over how he says it. It's such a crazy way to answer the phone. If you guys haven't watched Severance, you should watch it just for that moment because he says it so meanly. It's a good one. Anyways, have you been seeing all the theories about like the show and like all of the
That's incredibly broad of a question.
yeah, but like there's like a bunch of different like theories. Or like did you watch like the Harmony versus Mark S Wings thing?
No.
That was pretty good. They like named a bunch of like fan theories. They didn't confirm any of them, but
I have a pretty solid theory that I've had since near the end of the first season, and I'm only more confident in it now. So
that's interesting.
Pretty sure I've got it figured out.
One of the theories, very mild spoilers. I'm not even going to say the character's name, but still technically spoilers. One of the theories is that the wifey was actually running away. And I keep thinking about that now because I'm like, I just assumed that she needed help. So
interesting.
Yeah, I thought that one was a weird one. I don't know if I like believe it or not believe it, but it is like a interesting thought.
Sure.
All right. Well, enough of that. I watched last night right before bed. It's this movie called X2, which is such a 2000s thing. X2, aka X-Men 2, aka a movie that we watched.
Yes.
We will be reviewing that today. I'm sure, as you can tell from the title and or thumbnail. General thoughts. I did think that this was a good movie. I think it had some interesting stuff. I still think I liked the first one better. Not by much. Just like a little. But I did still think it was a really good movie. I had a good time. I enjoyed myself. Yeah, it was good. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's better than the first film in almost every way. The general consensus amongst the comic book movie fans is that this is one of like the all-timers. I would be inclined to mostly agree with that. Now, granted, you're coming into this fresh. I think that there is the element of nostalgia is removed, which may well play a factor in it. But yeah, I just think everything that the first film tried to do, this film does, and it does it in a more refined, nuanced, interesting, expanded way. That's not to say the film doesn't have issues, but yeah, I just think that it is the perfect sequel, in my opinion, in terms of just building on all the things that worked and giving us more of the things that maybe we felt a little bit shortchanged by in the first. So,
okay. I definitely understand like feeling that way, especially because it does have a much longer runtime. I think it has like an hour extra of runtime compared to the first film about. So it definitely has more space. Hmm. I think I guess I was just a little bit more invested in like the plot of the first one, maybe.
Sure.
Not that. Mm, yes, I believe that's what it was. I will say I did think it was funny that what's his face was like yelling at him, and he's like, Brian Cox. He's like Logan, and I was like, hey, that's you. That's silly.
That's who.
Brian Cox. Isn't that his name in in Succession?
That's not his name in Succession. That's the actor's name.
Dang it. Thought it was.
No.
What is his name in? Yeah, it is Logan Roy.
Yeah, you just said Brian Cox though.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. In the movie,
Yeah.
he yells Logan
Yeah.
at Hugh Jackman.
Oh, I see. I see. Right. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Yes, that was crossed wires for a second. I understand your
We
reference.
made
Yes.
it around eventually. Okay.
Indeed.
Okay. Also, I knew that I knew who was playing Nightcrawler, but I couldn't quite figure it out. I was like, who is this?
Sure.
It's
Alan Cumming.
Alan Cumming,
Yep.
which is crazy.
Sure is.
And I will say, didn't love his accent thing going on.
Mm.
Maybe not the best German accent I've ever heard.
No.
So,
No.
you know.
Agreed.
That's how I feel about that. Let's see. Where do I want to start? Sorry, my brain is like just starting to boot up, you guys. We'll get there. So we've got a bunch of stuff for this. Soundtrack, I have no thoughts. Not bad.
Yeah.
Not disruptive. But not really making any waves. I mean, it did technically make sound waves, but
get that brain to boot up faster, please.
he's just upset because it was a funny joke.
What's that now?
Bechdel test wise, I don't think this passes. Question mark.
I can't honestly. I don't think I've actively paid attention to look out for that for a while now, so I couldn't tell you either way.
That's because you're not a woman.
That's right. I'm a misogynist.
But a misogynist. That's what I think all the time. I'm like, damn, what a misogynist.
Yeah. I mean, look at me.
I don't believe that it does. If it does, it's because of Storm. When they go on a little mini mission, Storm goes with Jean.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably be the only time that they have a conversation.
Yeah, but even then, I'm not
confident.
enough. No.
Yeah. Well.
No.
All right. Let's see. What do we want to talk about here? There's a lot of stuff that I wanted to talk about in this movie.
Excellent.
There's a lot of really cool things. I don't want to like my brain keeps jumping to the end of the movie, but like I'm trying to like think of the stuff at the beginning.
I mean, you don't have to.
You just want to go full jump around.
Well, it doesn't matter. We're not doing a play-by-play of the film from beginning to end, are we? So.
Yeah, I just worry that like we'll miss stuff if I just jump straight to the end. All right, well, let's just jump. We have one Miss Kelly Hu playing Lady Deathstrike.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed this character. I thought this was a really interesting little subplot where she's being controlled by not Logan.
Excellent.
William Stryker. And she, for all appearances, has the same powers as Wolverine. So what I'm assuming is happening here is that they're finding people that have like basically a healing mutation and then messing with them. But I can't say that for sure. Like, I can't say that confidently that that's exactly what's happening. But there's at least 2 of them. How do you feel about this character?
Yeah, I don't know. I have much more to say other than what you've already said. That it's an interesting dynamic that's introduced to the film with alongside Stryker. There's like it's unveiled through the film that there is clearly history between Stryker and Logan that Logan isn't aware of because of his amnesia. But yeah, maybe you are sort of along the right lines. And this isn't giving you a hint either way, I wouldn't read too much into the healing ability thing. But there is no denying that she also has the the adamantium in fingernails for her, not claws, but and she's controlled by Stryker, so you would logically deduce some kind of connection between the two, not necessarily in terms of like relationship or they're not familial or anything.
Yeah, I mean, I will say it like more in just in the like talking about like the world building rather than like the story of the movies and stuff.
Sure.
I will say, like, you would have to assume that there is a lot more people with a healing mutation. Because for him to find 2 people when he doesn't necessarily have like the best resources to find somebody is interesting.
Wow. Maybe he didn't find them.
Sure.
Maybe they came to him.
Maybe.
But
he would still have to be like, hey, looking for a healing mutation. I keep wanting to say quirk. If you hear me say that, it's because it's from My Hero Academia. I mean mutation if I say it. It's trying to come out of my mouth every time I say it, so. Just in case. And then of course they go through a fight. She kicks his butt. Like, let's be honest. She was winning the fight. And then through using his environment, he does win, which is good. But he was getting his butt kicked, just saying. And then she has the metal pumped into her, and then you can see her come back to herself for a moment, which I do think is kind of interesting moment story-wise, because he doesn't really understand what's going on, I don't think. He just sees her eyes change color and is like, huh? And then she dies.
Yeah.
With a very loud metal thunk. What a horrible way to die. I think that I'm very curious why she came to herself in the last moments. know?
Mm.
Like what happened there at the end that made her, I guess, like wake up?
Maybe
Was
it's
it just
just
that she was dying, or I
yeah.
don't know, like the
I
adrenaline or
assume I
something?
assume that's the case. That it's sort of like, you know, I was about to say the tropey thing, but then I can't really point off the top of my head to an example of like the curse being lifted just as the person dies, kind of thing. You know, they have a moment of clairvoyance and clear thought before they're dead, where they say goodbye to their loved ones. It's like, I'm sorry. It's like, no, I forgive you. You did the right thing.
Yeah. I do wonder if it's just because we know that the dose doesn't last forever, right? Like the
Yeah.
mind control thing has to be re-administered.
Hmm.
So I wonder if it was just like an adrenaline thing, like her blood was just pumping it faster because she was fighting, and then like she starts dying. So of course your body's like trying to figure out how to stop that from happening.
Mm. Yeah,
So maybe that's what happened.
maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Doesn't super matter, but I do think it's interesting. Okay. Well, that's out of the way. We can keep going. So we do have a couple of interesting tidbits here. So when we are meeting the characters again, Wolverine has like quote unquote like gone on his quest to the lake and came back and was like, "Hey, there's nothing there, guys." When he comes back, I was curious, does Charles Xavier know that he missed something at the lake, or is he just taking it at face value?
That's a good question.
The only reason I ask is because Magneto says something towards the end of the film that makes me think that he might know. And I know it's more in reference to like his internal, like his memories, but it could also be in reference to the lake.
I I'd be inclined to say that he knew that he missed something, because I feel like it would be like it's nebulous, I guess, to just how powerful and sort of like omnipotent and omniscient Charles is. But I feel like it would be hard for him to not, especially with like Cerebro in play, not like just sense something, be able to sense that there's
Mm,
something um, at or around or about the lake that is being overlooked.
yeah, that makes sense.
But I don't know. I guess it's left open to interpretation, maybe.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Yeah,
Um, okay, cool. Well, it doesn't super matter either way, but just interesting.
sure.
Um, what else are we gonna talk about? It's I appreciate the way that they not necessarily fully changed the dynamic, but I guess like clarified the dynamic between Wolverine and Rogue in this film.
Hmm.
In that like in the last film, he wasn't like accepting her advances, but like there was kind of like a weird, like just a tiny bit of a weird tone to it. And I feel like they did fix it a little bit where it's like it seems very much like she likes him in the way that like you'd have like when you're like a kid, like, oh yeah, I have a crush on my teacher or whatever. It feels
Yeah,
very much more like that now, where it's like it's very obvious that like she likes him, trusts him, maybe has a crush on him in that way, like a trusted adult kind of thing. But he like doesn't reciprocate that at all and very much feels like he's in charge of her or responsible for her or whatever. So I'm glad that they clarified that because I did
yeah.
think that that was slightly weird, slightly off from the first one.
Agreed.
And then of course we introduce, not that he's not in the first movie, but her boyfriend, who of course is like, that's my woman.
Mm-hmm.
Which is silly. What else do we want to talk about?
I will say, because you brought him up.
Please.
Iceman, pretty dope.
Mm-hmm.
Now, right, so this is a bit multi-layered. The X-Men in general, obviously, are sort of like allegorical for, like we talked about the other week, about like prejudice and xenophobia and alienation, and the idea of societal outcasts and all of these things. And you can kind of add in, obviously Magneto was there anyway with his history, but also you can throw in Nightcrawler to this conversation in terms of he's a very deeply religious character, right? Very sort of philosophical and whatnot. But you brought up Iceman. Now, I can't guarantee when this happens, so I can't place it. But alongside the idea of, prejudice and societal exile and all of these things, there is something interesting about Iceman that may have now be considered like retroactive, and make something about this film in retrospect more interesting. Bobby's parents, when they go to his house, they don't believe or want to believe or whatever that he's a mutant. They're sort of
tried not.
Indeed. They sort of, they technically they don't know that he is, but you also get the sort of very distinct impression that they don't want him to be either. And there's a lot of conflict, or implied conflict, when he does tell them that
that was very allegorical for coming out, right?
Precisely. Yeah. And again, I don't know exactly when this happened timeline wise, but Iceman now is one of the most famous gay characters in comics.
Interesting. Please tell me he ends up with Pyro, because
that would be interesting. I don't believe that he has been.
That's a missed opportunity right there.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, I don't know, he that it'd be interesting for me to look into, and I probably should have done it beforehand, of when that happened.
It might have been this movie.
Well, yeah, it was like canonized in the comics at one point. It wasn't always the case, but maybe it was this film that was the impetus. I'd have to look into that, because it would be interesting to see whether that was in the comics beforehand, and what the film does here is an interesting way of playing with that without directly commenting, considering the era in which it came out. Or it was the other way around, where the film informed the comics going forwards. Yeah, but also I think just again adds to the complexity and nuance of the themes that the X-Men is able to tackle, with just the sheer amount of different people. Let's see. So when did that come out?
While you're looking that up, I have two little fun facts for people. One, the actor that plays Iceman was in Alan Wake 2.
Yes.
Which I thought was interesting.
And Quantum Break.
Oh, I didn't know that one.
Yeah.
I thought that was interesting. Also, I
He's also
could
in The
not.
Boys.
It was driving me freaking crazy. So there's the specific guard that works in the glass prison that's like the main guard. And I was like, who the hell is this? I know who this is. Looking at his face again, I figured it out. He plays the Vulture in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was like, that wasn't Michael Keaton. What are you talking about?
No. In Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yeah, when we're talking about Marvel stuff, it's probably not a good idea to stop at Vulture.
Well,
you
that's
know?
fair.
Yeah,
Honestly, my brain doesn't connect with that.
that's
So,
right. Yeah.
or at least I'm pretty sure that's him. It looks like him if it's not, but
So Wikipedia, which is of course the most reliable of sources, is
it
telling me
is.
that in All New X-Men issue 40, the time displaced Iceman is revealed to be gay, and that seems to be the first iteration, and that came out in 2014. So
Interesting.
it was canonized in the comics, obviously considerably far in the future post this film. And again, would probably need research, but there may have just been a case where the sort of family denial was a thing in the comics. And it's just so after the fact that they have decided to rework that family, denial to coincide with an LGBTQ plus storyline, which makes sense.
Okay, guys, I looked it up. It is a different actor, and I like looking at them, they look so similar. It's freaking me out. But
Who are we talking
anyways,
about?
we've just found a doppelganger for the Vulture. The guy that plays him, not the Vulture in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So I looked up the actor.
My brain is
So I looked up the actor, and it's a completely different guy. But if you do look at them side by side, they do look very similar, especially younger. So weird.
Yeah, but it is. I mean, it is funny that Pyro and Iceman are good friends, because you'd think logically that.
I think that would be a really good ship.
I just don't know how it would work. It'd be a bit dangerous, I think.
Would it?
I mean, yeah.
Why? They don't have to use their powers. Like they can.
What if it accidentally happens?
They can kiss without using their powers.
What if something happens by accident?
I mean, I guess.
Bobby's just going to turn into a puddle.
I don't think that's how it works. I don't think he's made out of ice.
I mean, how do you know?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I haven't tried to melt him before.
Can confirm.
Can I just say, I do feel like his brother, I know it's like very allegorical and stuff, but like if we're talking about just strictly the story pieces of it, it feels like his brother is also a mutant.
Interesting.
Where it's like he's very much, because like otherwise, like I understand like the fear of like being like a mutant or whatever, but it feels like when he left, I thought he was freaking out because he's also a mutant. Like I thought that's why he was leaving the table, and then he called the police or whatever. I feel like he has to be a mutant. And I do also wonder if the dad is, but I don't know that one. What's funny too is for Iceman, like he could kind of, because of the nature of his power, he could kind of justify just like pretending he's not a mutant, you know? Not that he should, but like the way that his power works, like kind of has to manifest. And I'm sure it would slip out if he did try and live that life every once in a while. But I do think that's one of the few people that could just not. But yeah, I do think it's crazy that his mom was like, Can you just not?
That's how it goes.
Yeah. What a crazy time. All right. What else do we have to talk about? While we're on Iceman, we may as well talk about like kind of the relationship between him and Rogue. I do like for this movie, I do like their relationship. Um, I love that he's like very much dedicated to it. He's like, "You won't hurt me," and then she like hurts him. But the first kiss went okay. And she just got a little bit of his power.
Yeah.
I do think that the concept of like lacking human physical affection is a very interesting one where it's like not everybody, but a lot of people do love physical affection and like, being able to like hug people or, enjoy people's company and stuff like that. And she's very limited in what she can do, and she has to be very cautious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very interesting that he's so trusting of her. But I wonder how much trust it is versus like he just wants to be closer. When he's saying like, "Oh, you won't hurt me." Like, like I wonder how much of that is like born from like trust versus born from like I just want to be closer to you and don't care about the consequences.
Mm.
So, I do think that their dynamic is really interesting. Especially because they're technically a trio. Not like romantic relationship wise, but friendship wise, because it's Iceman, Rogue, and Pyro, and one of their trio has now left.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Any thoughts on their relationship?
Rogue just needs someone. Rogue just needs to find like a mutant that is, I don't know, like I don't know. I was going to say impenetrable, but like that wouldn't even matter because if you touch them, you just take their impenetrability. It's like what you need. Rogue needs someone who can just like create a clone of themselves. You know.
Well, I don't even know if it's about a clone.
So then the clone can do it, and then the clone can just like wither and die or whatever by continual contact, and then
Well, I think it's a lot. Like her like contact is a lot about like it's drawing the mutation from them / energy, because she also can't touch non-mutants. Luna, I don't want your fur in my mouth, honey. She also can't touch non-mutants, so she's drawing what, life force? Like their cells? Like, do we know exactly what she pulls from people?
yeah, just like essence, I guess. And it happens to be that if you're doing that to a mutant, you take on the essence of their powers too. She just needs to get. You know what, Rogue? Stop complaining. Just get a better grip of your powers, please.
Yeah, just control it.
Yeah.
No, what I was trying to think of is like what would be like the perfect opposite to her like powers. And I don't know if it would just be somebody having like infinite essence, if infinite life force, like infinite like I don't know. Like I was just trying to like that's why I was trying to like understand like what is her power, so what would be the opposite? But I just don't actually know.
Maybe it's just somebody who has the exact same power set as her.
So they just
cycle, once they're
it's like
touching each other, they're
a
just
suck system.
I regret bringing that up as a concept now.
Is that what you're saying?
No, that wasn't at all what I was saying. I was saying anything but that.
Sucking cycle
No,
system.
we can stop. We can stop saying that now.
Hey, that's what you were saying.
Nope.
Oh, that's silly. Very silly. Um Okay, so what else do I want to talk about? I do want to talk about Nightcrawler. I do think that he's a very interesting character. So basically, he's like this dude that grew up in Germany in the circus, and he can teleport, but his powers manifest in a way that makes him look non-human.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I will say I loved the very brief conversation between him and Mystique, where he was like, "Oh, if you can always look normal, why don't you?" And she's like, "Because we shouldn't have to." I
Yeah.
thought that was very poignant.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I just think Nightcrawler in general is. I'm coming in with a fair amount of bias because I know him from external media.
Like the actor
No, like the
or the
character of
character? Oh,
Nightcrawler.
okay.
So yeah, I just think it's. Admittedly, in this film, I don't think he was perfectly executed, like you said, the accent and stuff. But I think all of the things that make Nightcrawler compelling to me is in this film in some capacity, which is. And it's difficult because when it's an ensemble film like this, where you're adding in even more characters to the roster and the core team and all of this, it's like an end game situation where you can't give everybody their due process, due time. But yeah, I think
No, I
they laid a
really,
good groundwork for him.
yeah. I will say I think that he's probably one of the most interesting characters that we've been introduced to thus far. In terms of like, I feel like his character is actually fairly well thought out / in depth, where you have this character that clearly looks other, but not only that, like I would argue that he looks pretty close to like what somebody would consider like a demon, maybe.
Yep.
Which one for two things, right? Like one, he's like clearly like a very religious person. I don't know if his mutation made him religious or if he was religious before and this just kind of like exacerbated the situation. But like he has all of that that's kind of like an antithesis to what he looks like, but it's also a reflection on like his character where everybody is naturally so afraid of him, but he is one of the most kind characters and most gentle characters. Like he's very very sweet with everybody.
Hmm.
And so I think that that's like such an interesting juxtaposition for his character.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a fair number of the X-Men team are compassionate, but I think that adding in the little twinge of his not only his upbringing but his again deep religious beliefs sort of compounds those themes, as you say. It sort of makes him simultaneously fit alongside a lot of the core X-Men very well in terms of his sort of humanitarian is the wrong word, but compassionate personality, looking to
Mm-hmm.
help others, but it's coming from a different place, or not from a different place, but from a very specific sort of directed place. So, yeah, Big fan.
Yeah. I will also say, like, I don't know if this is movie specific or if this is also in the comics, but like in terms of religion, he says that his skin is also carved because of his religion, like he's carving his sins into his skin or whatever. But when I'm looking at like the images of what he looks like in the comic, it doesn't seem to reflect that.
Yeah, I'm not confident that is. I mean, I don't think it's a like universal thing for him in the comics. It may have been in a specific run or something at some point, but I feel that might have just been a aesthetic design for the film, maybe more so than anything else.
Okay, cool. Yeah, well, I really enjoy his character. I think he's really cool. And I think that he has a very unique and interesting perspective on what it means to be a mutant.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, in terms of like religion, upbringing, like the way he's perceived, stuff like that. All of that stuff. Very interesting. Very, very interesting character.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who else do we want to talk about?
I will say,
Ooh.
fun little tidbit, not that it's
Mm-hmm.
relevant to the film at all, and it won't be brought up ever again. In the comics,
Okay.
it was retconned that Nightcrawler is actually the son of Mystique.
Interesting.
Which
And that's why
is
he looks like that.
how they kind of justified why his mutation manifests in that specific way, that the sort of natural blue state of Mystique is passed down genetically.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But not for this universe.
No.
Okay. Very interesting. All right. Well, what else do I want to talk about? I do want to talk about Mystique a little bit. Not only in like in terms of like her reflection of Nightcrawler, but I feel like after this film, I did like her in the first film, but I feel like I'm just such a huge fan of her after this film now, because she is like so she's very self-sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And she is very, because like I don't think her mutation gives her that much of an edge on people. I think that she just has really trained herself to be so strong and so smart and so fast. And I find the idea of her and Wolverine being together very interesting. So
Yes. Mystique is sort of like the double agent, really, traditionally, which makes sense given her skill set.
given her power, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that not that what she does in this film or these films in general is outside of her character traditionally, but it also comes down to, I think, the makeup department, selling the second skin she has, and also the performance. I think Rebecca Romaine she holds like goated status along a lot of comic book movie fans, for what she did with the character, how she plays it. And I would concur. I think that she's just like the potential of the character is quite intimidating in and of itself, but the presence that she has, that she brings, it's quite, I think, quite subtle a lot of the time, but there is something quite, again, intimidating about that subtlety. She just sort of seems she's towing the line of otherworldly.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. She definitely looks other,
Sure,
right?
yeah.
She doesn't look like anything that we would normally consider human, beyond like maybe like her form.
But she just sort of does she makes everything look relatively effortless,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like quite scary when you see a lot of the others or people fighting her or whatever, um, putting in a lot of effort, and she's just sort of almost, ballerina, just gliding around the place and doing flips and jumps and stuff without
Yeah.
breaking a sweat. It's scary.
Yeah. I do think that's actually like kind of interesting, like specifically like when she breaks into the facility by herself. Um, I think it's such an interesting comparison because she the night before had like tried to approach Wolverine, and I do have questions about that conversation, but like beyond the like her seemingly kind of wanting to be with Wolverine, um he denies her. She leaves, right? This next day he's like watching, right? Like he's like keeping an eye on her
Mm.
because he's like, holy cow, like she's like, I don't know. I think she's so cool because she, like you said, effortlessly just beats up all of these people, makes it in, like just transitions between like from like body to body. Yeah, she's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I think that her fighting is also very well choreographed.
Hmm. Agreed.
So yeah. But no, for like the conversation that they have, she says, "You know what I want?" But that's like it feels like such a the line feels like almost like out of place for me because I'm like, you haven't really communicated like what you want, you know?
Yeah, I get that.
So I'm like, no, no, I don't know. Like, you want to make out with him? Like, I don't know. What? You know what I want? Like, what? Um, so I'll leave that there, but I do think that she's got a really cool character. And I do think it's interesting that Wolverine is the only one that has scarred her.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, okay. I have a random jumping point really quick just because I think it was like it kind of stood out to me in my brain. So there's when William starts to invade the school, right? Like and his people start to invade the school, there is a kid that shows up, or at least what I'm assuming is a kid because he's a giant man. He's that metal dude, right?
Hmm.
And he's like, I can help. Okay, is he a student or did he just show up at the school and is like, I can help?
Uh,
Do you see what I'm saying?
yes.
Because the way that he says, he's like, let me help. I can help. Like I could see it. To me, my brain read that as, oh, he just randomly showed up and is like trying to help them. But like in context of the story would make more sense that he's a student at the school. But if he is a student at the school, why is he built like that? He looks crazy.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it depends on where you're looking, really, but he is a part of the X-Men, a pretty pivotal part, generally speaking. Um, Depending on where you're looking, he's either like a long-term student or he's moved up to a teacher. Um,
Jesus. The actor is 6'6". Yeah.
but yeah, I don't know. I agree. Yeah, like I guess I never really thought about it too much, but does make sense that he kind of just pops up. I think when you get to that, it's sort of just the comic fans that were going to see this at the time were like, "Oh my god, it's that character," right?
Mm-hmm.
as more of like a cameo thing rather than trying to, which is doing the character a disservice, but just trying to, rather than trying to implement another fully formed character, they were already doing that with a few new ones in the film, and they kind of were just like, and yet there's more to come. You know, there's a lot of other technically cameos that happen throughout the film, in a small capacity with relatively big X-Men characters that get even less to do than Colossus does. So
Interesting.
yeah, it is strange. I never really processed that in my head because I always was just like, and there's Colossus. But yeah, they probably could have done a bit of a better job in being like a little bit earlier on, maybe in a scene being like, and there's this character.
Yeah. Here's my thing. There's a bunch of little kids. And then there's a 6'6" man that shows up. It's like, let me take these kids. I'm like, who is this? So next time you watch the movie, I guess you can like look and be like, wait a minute.
Sure.
Because that was crazy to me. Anyways, who else do we want to talk about? Did they ever make it canonical that Professor X and Magneto get together? Because it's starting to feel like that.
I don't think so, no.
It's starting to feel like that to me. So, just saying.
I mean, they love each other, but not in that way. There probably is some run out there that I don't know about where they have been romantically involved, but I think the point is that they are essentially, you know, brothers who deeply love and care for one another, but are on just diametrically opposite ends of the spectrum.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't think I have too much to say about either of those characters. I will say, like, a little weirded out by Professor X's like sudden ability to like pause time. I do think that it makes sense when they explain that it's not literally pausing time, it's more freezing all of the humans. And like based on like his abilities, that does make sense, but it was a little abrupt.
Sure. Again, I think that's just a trapping of the film where it's like, we'll throw in this reference to this power that he has and not really fully embody and embed it in the film in a understandable, you know, logical, believable way with any setup.
I will say I do think it's interesting that they like that the writers have thought, like with the writers of the comic, I'm assuming mostly that's going to be Stan Lee, but I guess there's a bunch of them as well. I do think it's very interesting that they like kind of thought through, like, okay, so he's like can control minds, can read minds, like how far does this go, and like what are the limitations on this? And I do think that that's like a very interesting like way to interpret like mind control and or mind reading.
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that.
Indeed. Agreed.
Also we have Magneto pulling iron out of that guy's blood.
Brutal.
Yeah, that was crazy. I assume he died from that, right?
You would assume so, probably.
Okay. My thing is like if they took all of the iron out of his blood, like I guess I don't know what that does to your body.
Not good things.
But I mean, I guess I could see like a world where he survives
long enough to get to a hospital where they pump iron back into him.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because he like it's like a traumatic injury. But I don't think he wasn't like bleeding out or anything. But I will say if iron is in your blood, does stand like the logic follows that he would have also pulled iron from his brain, in which case that probably would have killed him.
Yeah.
Not that it showed any injuries on his head, but so I guess it would probably be up to Magneto whether he wants to kill people or not. And based on his previous he probably does.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got a couple other characters. Wait, do you want to say anything else about Professor X from this film or Magneto?
No,
Before I
just
jump.
that I continue to enjoy their dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the thing that they always go back to in the comics and all of these films, because that back and forth between the two of them works so well.
Are Patrick Stewart and Gandalf friends in real life?
Yes.
That's cuties.
They
They're both
certainly
getting
are.
up there.
Don't say that. That makes me sad.
It makes me sad too. Let's see, 84 and 85. Yeah. They're pretty young still.
That's right.
They got time.
Yeah. Decades.
Some may say.
All say.
Okay, so there's a couple other characters that I think are left that we can talk about. Firstly, I think it's worth mentioning Storm, of course, because I think she's a cool character.
Mhm.
But I don't have too much to actually say about her character for this.
Yeah,
I
no.
do think I'm a little confused. Again, I think this is just the limitations, like you were saying, of the movie. I think I am a little confused what her like powers really, because obviously she controls storms, but like I'm a little confused like what the limitations of that are, and I'm like I don't really understand her powers that much. Not that it matters, but just pointing it out.
She can just control the weather.
Yeah, but when they start pulling all those tornadoes down,
Yeah.
that's not something that like realistically would happen in a storm. You know?
Yeah, but she can control it, where she can make that happen.
Don't know.
So hang on. Let me just get this straight. When we're talking about a film that has a blue demon with a tail that can teleport and a guy that can pull iron out of people's blood, where you draw the line is a woman
Too
that
many
is able to
tornadoes.
control the weather, but is somehow able to summon too many tornadoes.
Yes, that is
Okay,
absolutely where I draw the line. One of my
glad
biggest fears is tornadoes.
glad
Too
we
many
got that cleared up.
tornadoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
I'm glad we got that cleared up too.
Yeah.
Um okay, so we do have Storm. She kind I am a little confused on her dynamic with Nightcrawler. I couldn't tell if they were trying to set up like a romantic thing or if it was just a friend thing.
Yeah, just a friend thing.
So
I
that
know how you could have gotten a bit confused at points, but there's just sort of like a deep,
they just
again.
stared into each other's eyes
Yeah,
a
exactly.
little too deeply, you know?
Yeah, it's just like a kinship, you know.
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah.
I will say I think the Storm did some really cool stuff. But as far as like story wise, I think she was kind of just there for most of this film.
Hmm.
Don't think that she had a lot of like depth added to her character.
Agreed. Yeah, a shame because Halle Berry is a great actress and Storm is a
Hmm.
really cool character, both
Hmm.
conceptually and aesthetically and powers wise. But again, it's kind of like it's like a Captain Marvel situation in my head. I mean, there were probably other reasons when this film came out that they didn't prioritize her, unfortunately. But also, I think there is undeniably a degree of like, well, if you just let Storm go sort of untethered and just go crazy, she would be MVP main character every single time, super overpowered,
Mm.
you know? So I feel like they sort of by design use her sparingly, and don't just have her constantly do crazy shenanigans.
I mean, I definitely understand going that way with a character, but I will say I do think it's also very interesting when writers have an understanding that their character is too overpowered and they try to find ways around that.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's also a really interesting thing to do. So, you know, who knows? Okay, well, we have the last little piece we have here is, of course, our trio. We have Jean, we have Wolverine, and we have Cyclops,
What a
who
love
is missing,
triangle.
who's missing for most of the film. Yeah, what a love triangle. It's like, can't you guys just like all get along?
Why don't you just all make out? Just all make out.
Yes. Just go make out. Nobody's gonna stop you. Well, I guess Jean being dead, maybe dead, does.
Yeah.
I really don't believe she's dead, just to be very clear. But
well, I mean, what was all that fire about going around her just before she got flooded?
Is her real power that she's a phoenix, and her name is Fox?
No.
She's secretly the phoenix that helped Harry Potter.
You take off the last bit of that sentence, maybe we're cooking with something.
Yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, I don't believe for like even a half a second that she's dead. I don't even believe that Professor X thinks that she's dead. I think he does for a brief second where he's like, oh, she's gone. But it like feels more just like she's knocked out, so he can't connect to her brain.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like she's actually dead. You know?
Maybe we'll find out.
Is her character in the other X-Men films, like, sorry, not 3, like, not this actress, like her character, Jean Grey?
Some of them.
Okay, because I swear I do not know who this character is, but maybe I watched like the newer X-Men. I don't know.
Maybe.
Don't know.
I can name the actress that plays her, but that wouldn't necessarily mean anything to you. I don't think.
Let's see. Yeah, because I watched the one with Jennifer Lawrence in it. I only watched the first one of that, which is X-Men First Class.
Yeah, Jean isn't in that.
Okay, so then yeah, that makes sense.
Not as far as I remember. No, she's not.
Kevin Bacon's in it, apparently.
He is.
Don't remember that.
Depends on how much of the film you watch, to be honest.
I watched the whole thing,
scene,
but
and he is the primary antagonist, but maybe
yeah,
you just won't pay attention.
Yeah. No, probably not. I really don't like superhero films.
Why are we here again?
Good question. Because I'm trying to catch up on Marvel.
Yeah. Interesting, because Marvel is superhero films.
You should watch My Hero Academia. Anyways, listeners.
I don't want trauma, thank you very much.
It's so good. Okay, so we have a couple of interesting things that happen in this film with this dynamic, right? Which I think Mystique does slightly play into it as well, but mostly with these trio, where Wolverine has gone, come back, there and back again, as they say in Lord of the Rings. And when he comes back, he eventually meets up with Jean and is like, hey, I'm like really interested in you. She turns him down. Mystique then is like, comes to see him and he's like, wait, you're not Jean. And she's like, yeah, but you know what I want. Anyways. And then after that, like she ends up dying. Cyclops is devastated. The actor doesn't do a great job of showing it, but Cyclops is devastated. And then we have this weird moment with the two bros where he's like, she chose you in the end. Which, can I be honest with you? I know what it meant. But I'm very confused how he would know what it meant. I think if I was in that situation, I'd be like, what? What are you saying to me? I think I wouldn't have let that go. I would have been very confused and asked questions, but
Yeah. I think you might be getting too caught up in the weeds there. I think you might just be like, I think that was a narrative thing that they did, where it's just
sure,
you're watching a film.
sure.
But no, in universe, it is, again, it's one of those things where it's like, could probably use a bit of clarification there, Gene, just to make sure there's no crossed wires, there's no misunderstandings going on here.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. I enjoyed this dynamic. I do think it's interesting that Wolverine is telling him, if we ignore the weirdness of the messaging, is telling him like, "Oh, I made her choose and she chose you."
Mm.
I do think that's a very interesting thing to say to somebody. Like, I understand that he like means well and it's like a well-intentioned, like he wants Cyclops to know that like in the end that she like just wanted him.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that that's like a nice intention, but I do also think that like in practicality that is kind of weird because not like focusing on like how he delivers the message, but like the messaging of like how I think if I was him, I would be very much like, how would you know? Like, why did she have to choose? Like, she's my girlfriend.
Mm.
you know, I do
I
think
just,
that's a
I
very
just,
interesting moment.
I just think Logan was trying to, even if I'm not fully confident he believed what he was saying, but I think he was just saying it because he knew what Jean meant to him, and by him I mean Cyclops,
Yeah.
and was therefore sort of, again, like you said, Cyclops being distraught about Jean and whatnot. It's like, well, can you tell what might end up being a white lie in the moment to try and spare someone who, even if you're reluctantly a friend and a comrade, can you spare them pain by telling them this thing? Because as far as Wolverine knows, Jean is fully gone. So it's like,
Yeah, but how would you like it, like genuinely, how would you take that? Like if you understood the meaning behind what he was saying. Like, "Hey, I made out with your girlfriend and she chose you."
um,
I understand Wolverine's intentions behind saying that, but like in practicality, like I don't think that that's like a very nice thing to tell somebody.
yeah, but I think it's kind of like an open secret to Cyclops. Like, it's going to sound rough to say it, and I don't mean this in like a dirty way or anything, but with the love triangle, traditionally, it is typically like Cyclops being cucked a little bit, where he is the fiance and he is the one that Jean always goes back to, but Wolverine is continually the guy that sort of draws him away. And I think that all three are aware of that situation, that's how
Mm,
it is. Now in this film specifically, how much Cyclops is sort of conscious of exactly what is going on, I don't know. um so that does lean maybe a little bit into the, you would expect maybe a more vitriolic response, but I also kind of just believe, even if it's not explicitly shown or said, that Cyclops isn't stupid and kind of can read between the lines,
yeah.
that there is something deeper going on between Wolverine and Jean.
Yeah. I
Um,
will say it's very like I think that between Wolverine and Cyclops, they are acting like a little bit like cavemen beating their chests a little bit,
yeah, exactly.
but I think it's more for comedy. In terms of like the way that Cyclops is actually handling the situation, I do think it's very mature of him to like let her make her choice.
Mhm.
and like very, I feel like it's very like in a time of like when that film was coming out, could have very easily leaned very hard into toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting that they didn't.
Indeed.
So good stuff. I will say the one person we didn't talk about was Jason Stryker. Looked up the actor. He just is that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I don't have much to say about him. I think the most interesting thing about him is that he makes Stryker more three-dimensional in terms of his motives. You know, that his son has sort of quite a tragic story to him, and that kind of legitimizes in some way what Stryker is attempting to do. But yeah, I think like outside of that, it's just sort of like a relatively generic antagonist role. There's not much to it personally.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, but I also think that I think it's more of just like in thinking that there's a little bit more depth to it, but I do think it's interesting that he was sent to the school, studied with Professor X, comes back and is like still essentially torturing his parents.
Sure.
Which is such an interesting thing because it's like where they are in the mutant versus like regular human, plain human, plain rice flavor. They are looking for any reason at all to hate mutants. When in actuality, I think most mutants would be fine, like neutral and or good people. Whereas like this is actually an exception where I think that Jason is probably actually truly like messed up in the head, and if he was just a regular human would probably be classified as some sort of like actual true mental illness, like whether he's like a psychopath or whatever it is, right?
Sure.
Like probably brought in dead animals as a kid and stuff like that, right? So like we see like an actually like broken human that's like not behaving like a normal human would, and instead of like kind of connecting that, like the father of course blames it on being a mutant.
Yeah.
And blames it on Professor X. So I do think that's interesting.
But again, I think that is more reflective on William than on Jason. You know, that he is like
Yeah.
Jason in and of himself could be a very interesting character, and they present interesting things. I just don't know that they, for Jason specifically, delve super into detail as much as I think they could have done with the dynamic that he presents the opportunity for. So
For sure.
yeah.
For sure. All right, what else we got here? We have we talked about all the characters. I feel like we've covered all the themes. Is there any other themes that you feel like we kind of missed out on?
Not really, because I think for the most part it is kind of, again, like I said right at the top, just a continuation, an expansion and a slightly deeper interrogation of the themes that were already present in the first film. Obviously there's some nuance going on, but for the most part it is, again, tackling those things that we listed off, just from new perspectives. So yeah, I don't think there's any key themes off the top of my head that we've missed out on.
Yeah, I will say I think that like the way that they present the information to the president, and they don't show what he does either. So he could still, commit to what he was going to do before.
Yeah.
But I do think that that's an interesting moment where it's like you can continue down this path of hatred and it's going to push the agenda of mutants and humans being at war, or you could try and reverse it or try and help us. And they kind of leave him with the decision. I do think that's interesting.
Yeah. I guess that's probably mostly because they don't want to enforce a decision that could be viewed as like, you know, oppression or subjugation of like
Mm-hmm.
we're the superior race and therefore we are putting our ideals and whatever on top of you. We are presenting it to you to show we are cooperative and letting you be the one that makes the choice.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, for through line, I would say the only through line we really have here is Wolverine going and coming back, and then end of the movie, Jean being quote unquote dead.
We'll see.
There's no way. Okay. Well, we are good here. What do we have left? Okay, next we're going to be watching X-Men 3, which is not called X-Men 3. What's the actual name of it?
X-Men: The Last Stand.
Thank you. I want to make sure I wrote that down because when I looked up X-Men 2 and X2 came up, I was like, I think this is the right thing, but cool beans. And we will be watching that next time, so we will see you guys in 2 weeks with that. I just realized I did not update the Patreon list, so hold while this loads. While we do so, I know we're not technically ranking for these, but where would this fall for you?
Again, similar to the first X-Men film, very high. I just think, and a lot of it, again, like last week, is certainly nostalgia, carrying a lot of it for me. But I just think that, again, the stuff that the X-Men inherently will tackle by default is incredibly compelling, regardless of how many times they do it. So, and also a lot of the characters are just dope. So,
okay. I think that I would also put it in a very similar spot. Like I said, I still think I enjoyed the first one better. That's not to say that this one was written better or worse than the last one. What I think it's just like in terms of like enjoyability of the film for me personally.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think I just had a little bit of a better time. Okay, let's see. I'm almost done, guys. Sorry. I know that we removed somebody, but I can't remember who it was. Oh, right here. And this person's there, here. No, my favorite name. It's okay, we have a new one. Okay, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Here's our Patreon list. Sorry. We have Fabulous Breanna, Breanna's mom, Breanna's brother, Lindsay, Nikolai at Night, Brendan Myers, Marcus O'Neill, Lillian, David Hartright, Dave Harp, the Xbox Expansion Pass, Lee Navarro, Silicana, Ellery Woods Parker III, Rick Davis, and Dingle Bamp. That's a name.
It's a good name. Don't know what it means, but doesn't have to mean anything, I guess.
Is that secretly you?
As if I would contribute to the 1,000.
The 1,000 patrons.
Wouldn't dream of it.
Whatever. That's funny. Okay, where, Sam, can people find you?
Anywhere and everywhere at Sam Heaney, Heaney.
Cool beans. You can find me at Fabulous Breanna, FabulOusBreanna. You can find Save the Game Media at Save the Game Media in most places. If not, it's going to be at Save Game Media, and we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Peace.